I'm Anastasia Chatzka, a fashion designer with over 20 years of experience and a sewing educator. And I'm really excited you're here to share another sewing adventure with me today. Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today we are going to transform this Canada Goose coat. It is so warm, but it is so ugly. So we are going to give it a makeover. I'm going to turn this into this. If you're not already a subscriber to Sewing Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. And if you don't know, I now teach sewing classes in my design studio in Chicago. So make sure you check it all out at sewinganastasia.com. So if you've got a coat at home that isn't quite your style, no worries. I'm gonna show you how to jazz it up and make it awesome. So this coat was given to me as a gift, which is awesome because it's super cozy and warm, but it is not my style. So I'm gonna show you how to transform it. And I bet you have a coat in your closet that's super cozy and warm and just needs a little update too. So follow along and I'm gonna show you exactly how to jazz up your coat. Supplies for transforming your coat are super simple. First, you're going to need a coat that needs transforming. So I've got this big ugly coat here that we're gonna be transforming. And I'm going to be using 3 different trims on this. And I think 3 different trims is really important for the design of the coat. So I'm going to be using a black sequin. I'm going to be using this really fun rainbow black yarn pink sequin. And I'm also going to be using this hard formed plastic trim as well. You're also going to need some matching thread. I'll be using black and pink. You're going to need a ton of pins to pin this all in place. And you're possibly going to need a hand sewing needle and a sewing machine. I've got my coat laid out and I am ready to map out my trims. So let's grab the trims and map it all out. So for my design, I'm going to be following the stitching lines that are already here on the puffy coat, which is awesome because it's going to be a great guide for sewing to make sure everything turns out nice and straight. So I have my trims laid out on the coat. I'm going to do this really bright one first, and then I'm going to do the pink plastic little flowers, which we are going to have to cut apart 1 row at a time because the full row is just way too big. And then we're going to do a row of the black sequins. So it's time to start pinning these all down. For this plastic trim, I'm going to be cutting all these rows individually, and these are going to have to be hand sewn onto the coat. Okay, let's pin this trim. I have the first 4 rows pinned on and I am ready to sew them on. So let's head over to the sewing machine and sew these tricky trims on. So before I start, I made sure I engage my dual feed, which is the walking foot for this machine, because I'm sewing through such thick fabric. I'm also going to be using a zigzag stitch on the edge of the trim at the bottom and the top because this is such a wide trim. If I was just to stitch in the middle, it would flip up and do some really funky stuff. So we're going to be zigzagging on the edge. Don't forget to back stitch or fix when you start. When you're starting with this thick fabric, you might need to push it through just a little bit to get it started for it to catch the feed dog underneath. Make sure your fabric is nice and flat as you're sewing as well. So sew a little, stop, and check. Okay, let's do it. We made it. Backstitch, hand cut. The next row of trim is this hard plastic trim. So we cannot sew through this. I'm gonna have to hand sew this. So I'm gonna skip this one right now, and I'm gonna move over to the deadly black sequins here. So we are going to sew these on with the machine, and I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch down the middle of them. So I've got my extra needles ready, and I am ready to go. I have my zigzag stitch set up to 7.5 in width, and I have my length set up to 8. So let's cross our fingers and hope this goes well. I sewed a few rows of the trim down. I got a row of the zigzag trim with all the colors down and a row of the sequin trim down. I only broke one needle and ripped one of my fingers open on the pins, but we are all good. We are making progress on this coat. It is blood, sweat, and no tears yet. So let's take a close-up look at the 2 rows of trim we have done so far. So you can see this beautiful zigzag row here. I zigzagged on both sides of this trim here, and then I zigzagged right in the middle of the sequin trim here. And it's looking great. Next, I'm going to be hand sewing on this plastic molded trim. So let's grab that hand sewing needle and some matching thread, and let's sew this on. So I have my pink needle threaded. And if you need help learning how to thread a needle and tie a knot, make sure you check out my video on it. So once we have that threaded, I am going to go through a little bit of my coat and come up in the middle of this trim. And I'm just gonna make sure this first one is really attached well and go ahead and make a knot. And then I'm gonna go ahead and move over to the next one. Now what I'm gonna do, so I don't see thread on the outside of my coat, I'm gonna go in between the layers and come back up in the next opening. And then I'm going to wrap around the thread. I'm gonna go back under and come back up in the opening. And this is gonna make sure that this trim is nice and secure all the way down. So we are just gonna continue doing this all the way down the coat. So this is gonna take me a minute, but let's do it. My thread is running out, so I want to make sure I'm knotting off before I start again. So make sure you leave yourself enough thread to be able to make a knot as well. So take the needle and go through the loop of thread and go ahead and do that a few times. We want to make sure this is nice and strong and not going to fall off. Then once you've made a few knots, you can go ahead and just cut off right down to that knot, and then go ahead and start with some new thread and you're all set to go. So let's go ahead and finish up the rest of this trim. I have all of the molded plastic trim hand sewn down, and it is looking great. Let's take a look at it. It's looking great. Even just with those few little hand stitches on there, it holds really, really well. The coat is turning out so cute so far. I'm loving it. I've got these 3 different trims on here with 3 different sewing techniques, and it's really adding a lot of color and texture and pizzazz, so it's super exciting. And I cannot wait to see how this coat ends up. Next, I'm gonna continue sewing these lines of trim on the coat. I'm just gonna be repeating the process again and again and again until I get all the way up to the hood of the coat. And then we get to go over all the little details on the coat and the sleeves. So let's do it. I have all the trim sewn onto the body of the jacket. It is looking awesome. I'm just loving it. It looks so good. Now we need to hand stitch the little trim pieces over the pocket, and then we gotta sew the trim to the sleeves. But the sleeves, it's all gonna have to be done by hand because I'm not seam ripping these sleeves apart to sew trim to them. So it's time to cut the trim for the sleeves, pin it on, and get hand sewing. And then we can take a look at it and see what else do we want to do to it. And since there's so much hand sewing to do on these sleeves, I think it's a great time to pin all this trim on and go watch a movie and do some hand sewing. Hi guys, I'm back today with a finished jacket with all this awesome trim on it. So yesterday when you saw me, I had to go home and hand sew all the trim on these sleeves, and I was gonna watch a movie while I was doing it, and I did just that. I watched Little Italy, super great movie, check it out for sure. Pizza, soccer, romance, what more could you want? So we have both of the sleeves finished, and the trim on the front of the jacket matches the trim line on the sleeves. So I'm loving how this looks, just really making a full line across the body and the sleeve connecting it together. Let's also take a look at the back of it. So you can see we have all these really fun trim pieces going down the jacket, alternating every third trim. And I'm just loving this jacket. It's so much fun. I actually can't wait to wear it outside and see if I get compliments on it because it's extra fun. And winter jackets are usually so boring. So this is such a great way to update your puffer coat because it already has the stitching lines in it. And all you need to do is add some trim to those lines that are already there, and you can use them as a guide. So fun. So you can see how the trim from the bodice lines right up with the trim on the sleeve. It even goes over and under the pocket, which I love. And it goes from here to here. And they all connect. It's so great. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. I hope you had fun watching me transform this puffer coat. And I totally know you got a puffer coat too at home that needs some transforming. So when you transform your coat, make sure you tag Sew Anastasia so that way I can post it and share it with everyone else. If you enjoyed this video today, make sure you give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and leave a comment down below. I would love to know what you thought of this project. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those fabulous social media websites, make sure you follow me along so that way you can stay inspired and creative with me. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!